No, see, that's why I gotta sit back here and make him look forward. See, with his body, I can make anything look forward.
What's wrong with him?
Nothing is going. Yeah, it's good. Get out.
So I would like to say good morning to everybody first.
Good morning.
Forgive me if I'm fidgeting with this, because I'm not used to I have a microphone thing. So Jerry suggested that I use this morning, so I will do my best. Our scripture this morning will be coming from John 8. I'll just go ahead and read that because the translation that I'm using is called the Good News translation. And it says, "Then everyone went home, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he went back to the temple. All the people gathered around him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman who had been caught committing adultery. And they made her stand before them all. 'Teacher,' they said to Jesus, 'this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. In our law, Moses commanded that such a woman must be stoned to death. Now what do you say?' Now they said this to trap Jesus so that they could accuse him. But he bent over and wrote on the ground with his finger. And as they stood there asking him questions, he straightened up and said to them, 'Whichever one of you has committed no sin may throw the first stone at her.' Then he bent over again and wrote on the ground. When they heard this, they all left one by one, the upward ones first. Jesus was left alone with the woman, still standing there. He straightened up and he said to her, 'Where are they? Is there no one left to condemn you?' 'No one, sir,' she answered. 'Well then,' said Jesus, 'I do not condemn you either. Go, but do not sin again.'" And as we heard this morning, as we read, the topic of our discussion this morning is from the judgment seat to the mercy seat. So even in the earliest annals of recorded history, we will find that society has always been judgmental. Now, we can look at some of the later lessons that we will find through history. There was a book written in 1487 called The Laius Maleficarum, or The Witch Tamper. And this book was designed to prove to you that witchcraft existed, to make you crazy, or to make people think that you were crazy if you disagreed with the fact that witchcraft existed. And then it gave you specific instructions how to torture, persecute, and kill witches. Now, most of the time, the people that were considered witches were just people that disagreed with the establishment. So somebody didn't like somebody else, so they said, "You know what? You're a witch. Let me get this book that shows me how to torture you and kill you." But you know what? Thank God, we don't do that anymore. Now, the Salem witch trials, about 200 years later, and a series of trials once again. People were being persecuted for being witches. Now, it kind of snowballed a little bit more because now witches were considered mainly women, free thinking, they knew how to read, they were well educated. So if they disagreed with the man of the household, or if his crops failed, or if their babies died, they were considered witches. They dabbled in witchcraft. So now I've got to take you out, I've got to persecute you, I've got to try you because you're a witch. I don't like what happens when you're around, so I'm going to sit you down and judge you as a witch. But as I said, thank God, hey, we don't do that now. The 1950s, McCarthyism became very prominent, and McCarthyism is defined as the practice of making accusations of disloyalty, subversion, or treason without proper regard for evidence. So during probably roughly a 6-year period in the United States, you had people being accused of being communist sympathizers or communists themselves, left and right. You had government officials whose careers were being ruined, people's lives were being They would have a Hollywood blacklist of people that could not work because they were being accused of being a communist. So in the 1950s, we kind of got a modern day witch hunt. But thank God, we don't do that anymore. Dr. Martin Luther King suffered immense judgment throughout his lifetime, but not in the way that any of us would think. He was on the FBI's hit list. These people, along with J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI at this time, COINTELPRO, they bugged his phones, they tapped his conversations, and I'll tell you the truth, Martin Luther King was no saint in his personal life. It's well known that he had numerous extramarital affairs, but the FBI's purpose in doing this is because they knew that the people's judgment on him would make him a less effective civil rights leader, effectively neutralizing the amount of good he could have done. But thank God, you don't do that anymore. George Zimmerman, Paula Dean. Last year, early part of this year, we all saw the trials that took place on TV. Zimmerman was pretty much run through the ringer. Trayvon Martin, his victim, was run through the ringer. Now, no matter what side of the fence you sit on with either of those two gentlemen, what we do know is that both sides were extremely judgmental towards the other. Paula Dean, 20 years ago, she said some things that came to light. Lost her endorsements from Walmart, lost her television shows, modern day, 2012, 2013, modern day witch hunt. Thank God we don't do that anymore. So, as you can see, throughout the recorded history that we've had, society has always been judgmental from the earliest up until the present time. Socrates had a conversation with one of his students, and the student was to explain to Socrates what piety meant. Now, piety is just another word for holy. So, the student gave Socrates about 4 or 5 different answers. And one of the ones that I love the best is he said that piety is what the gods love. And Socrates flipped it around and he said, is it piety because it's pious, or is it pious because the gods love it? Now you think about that. Since we elevated ourselves to the status of gods of our own existence, are the things that we're saying are holy, are they holy because they are truly holy, or are they holy because we love it? You see, if something doesn't fit in our little box of rationale, our own existence, we kind of sit it to the side and we place judgment on it. If it doesn't fit the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, the dog, the SUV parked in the garage, if it's outside of that realm, we cast judgment on it. I've dealt with situations where they told me I was too black to work here, but then I go back to where I grew up and they told me I was too black to come back to the neighborhood. Women deal with it all the time. If your breasts aren't big enough when you go and apply for a job, your hair's not blonde enough, or maybe your curves don't sit inside the lines like somebody says they're supposed to, you don't get the job. There's judgment being cast. And the problem is that we have to prove ourselves by exposing every aspect of everything that we've ever done. So when somebody finds out my deepest, darkest secrets, it becomes a catch-22, because now, whereas you only judge me on the surface, now because you truly know who I am, you're still placing me in a seat of judgment. And I don't move forward, I don't move backwards, I'm just sitting in the seat of judgment. Now, Alfred Hitchcock said it the best. He said, a glimpse into the real world proves that horror is nothing think about it, she got the two lovers intertwined in an illicit affair. You just think about what's that book that came out, 50 Shades of Grey. That's what's going on behind this curtain. So the story tells us that this woman was caught in the very act of adultery. Now, the one thing that kind of gets looked over is how did they catch her in the act of adultery? Well, the thing is, they had to be looking and searching and waiting for the opportunity to catch this woman in adultery. But how did they do that? You see, a lot of people think that this story is just about an angry mom that attacked and judged the poor innocent woman. But the thing that we have to understand is, in order for these people to catch her in the act of adultery, they had to know her life. They had to be familiar with her. The people that caught and accused her were people that she was comfortable with, people that she saw in her everyday life, people that she ate lunch with, people that she worked with. Some of them may even have been considered friends. But they knew the ins and outs of this woman's life in order to catch her in the very act of adultery. It was a setup. The thing is that a lot of times people will get to know us. They'll find out our habits. They'll find out where we hang out, find out who our friends are, and they will learn the intricacies of our lives so they can gather information, or better yet, so they can gather ammunition. So when the time comes, they can catch us doing something that they feel like we're not supposed to be doing. So you think about it like this. This story is not just a perfect storm of coincidences. This is a snapshot of real life. Because people still do this to this day. They use those same tactics. They appear genuine. They extend a handshake and say, hey, how are you doing? How's life going? What's going on with the family? How's everything going? Appear genuine. They give us a and then slowly but surely as the relationship develops, they poke and they prod and they find out what those weak points are in our lives. And that's something that we have to understand is that everybody that inquires about our life is not doing it for genuine purposes. See, some people are trying to test us for weaknesses systematically. And that was seen in Jurassic Park, where the game board and Dr. Alan Grant were talking about the velociraptors and what their habits were, what they did. And one of the things that stuck out to me about this scene is that the velociraptors, when they were being fed, they would attack certain points in the fence. And the reason that they did that was because they were testing the fences systematically for weaknesses. So they were trying to find those weak points in the fence. So if there was ever a chance for them to get out, or there was ever a chance for them to bust loose and break free, they would do that. Now, people will do the same thing for us. They'll poke and prod, and once they find those weak points, they remember, make a mental note, and then they sit down and they have that conversation. Can you imagine this young woman? Now, the sin that she was committing was wrong. But just imagine how she got set up to be caught in the act of adultery. She probably sat down at the lunch table, if you want to put it into these terms. She and her lady friend were talking, and they said, you know what? And that brother Rick, that's a tall glass of milk right there. I sure would like to get a drink of that. This is probably the conversation. This is probably how the conversation went, because now she exposed herself. She's a married woman. He may be in a relationship with somebody else, but now they have a reason to watch. They have a reason to try to catch dirt on her, because now her being a married lady, find out if there's anything else going on. So they traveled through this story. And I'll tell you that Jay and I experienced something similar to this situation. The pastors that we had in Tennessee, they played this part pretty well. They got to know us, invited us in their home, we ate together, we prayed together, we preached together, until we decided, or they decided, that we stepped outside of their little boundary box. Jerry was persecuted. I remember the Sunday that I was there. They told us not to talk to them, not to speak to them, not to have anything to do with them because they were a danger to the church. When they found out how close we were, I was next. They invited me over. Cooked, and food wasn't really that. It was me. They invited me over to eat. Sat down, had a great conversation during dinner. Dinner's over. I go sit in the living room. They say, "Hey man, you still drink with Jerry?" I'm like, "Yeah, we still talk on a pretty regular basis." They say, that's going to be how it's going to be. We can't have any juices in this church. What goes on in this church stays in this church. And this is a natural conversation that I had. Now these are people that appear to be on the surface people of God. They were supposed to be my friends and what I consider, but they used underhanded tactics. They were snooping around my life to find out what I was doing, so they could pull the curtain back and expose what they felt like the wrongs were in my life. The pastor's wife created a fake Facebook profile, and she would antagonize her own members in the church through a false Facebook profile. She found out what your deepest, darkest secrets were, and if you stepped outside of her boundary box, here comes, well, you know that this, and this, and she's sending messages and really taking the most inner secrets of somebody's life, and she's using it to break your trust. Now, I'm not telling you all this to horrify you or to make you scared to trust in the people of God, but what I am telling you is that we cannot afford to be like this. John chapter 13, verse 35 tells us that by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And then 2 Corinthians 5:20 tells us that we're supposed to be ambassadors for Christ. Now that word ambassador means that we're supposed to be official representatives or promoters. So if we're not showing love, if we're not doing the things we're supposed to do, if we're not genuine in our walk with Christ, then we're not doing it right. We have so many people that come to church Sunday after Sunday, week after week, month after month, year after year, and they're no better for coming than they're no better when they come in and they are when they leave. We have people that actually show up to church every week that leave worse than when they first came in. If you show their first picture. This would be the representation of somebody that could be considered a healthy Christian. This is how people should look when they come in. Smiling, happy, love, protecting, a sense of community. But most of the time, we have people that leave church looking like this way. Bruised, abused, broken. Because they come in and they don't get that sense of community. We have people that want to come in and appear genuine. But in reality, they're just waiting for an opportunity to judge. So, moving went through the rest of the story, we find out that these people, the scribes, are not content to just break this young lady's trust. They want to destroy her spirit. So we find out that she was caught in the act of adultery. And it doesn't say that she was caught and then brought forward. It doesn't say that she was caught and she spent time in a jail cell. It says she was caught in the very act of adultery. Now, I catch my kids in the act of doing things they're not supposed to be doing. Why? Because I'm there, or I walk in and get ready to do it. I catch my dog all the time trying to take craps in the house. Why? Because I'm there when she gets ready to do it. So the thing is that this young lady was caught in the very act of adultery. Now you think this is going to cause a scene to catch somebody in the act of adultery. And this is why I always had problems with bosses that wanted to reprimand people for doing things in a public manner. Because it's embarrassing, it's shameful, and 9 times out of 10, it's not effective. There's a tactful way to get people to understand that they've done something wrong, as opposed to making a mockery or a public display. But that wasn't satisfactory enough for the scribes and the crowd at this time. They knew that this woman had just been ripped from her bed. That situation was hot. But this one was about to get hotter because they pulled her, for according to cliche, out of the frying pan and they placed her into the fire. And I don't know if anybody's ever observed fire or if you've watched what fire does. But if you look at it, and if you've ever cooked over and over fire, fire makes a mockery of the wood that it's burning. It makes a mockery of the food that it cooks, because at any given time, it can burn out of control and consume everything that it's touching. And that's exactly what this crowd did. They became like these flames. They were mocking this woman, dancing around her, letting her know that at any given point in time, we can break your spirit. At any given time, we can consume everything about you. They wanted to destroy this young lady's spirit by sitting her in the seat of judgment. So the thing is that now that she's sitting in the crowd, they start hurling insults at her. You whoremonger, you Jezebel, you loose woman. Look what you did. Look what you've done. You're worthless. You're not. This is what they did to this young lady. They opened up wounds so deep that by the time they got done with her, she wouldn't even know who she was. And I work in the medical field, so I've seen people that don't take care of their bodies come in to my facility, and they have wounds so deep that you could stick a fist into their wound. And do you realize that many of them die with that because there is nothing medically that anybody can do to heal these wounds? That's what they did to this lady. They opened up wounds so deep that there was nothing that could be done to heal the labels that they hurled on her. And this is what the church does day in and day out. People walk in those doors. They don't look like us. They don't talk like us. They don't sound like us. And we sit right here, and we cut so deep that by the time they leave, they don't want to have anything else to do with anything that goes on in the church. We're supposed to be a place of healing, but we become a place of destruction. You know, people who always say that sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's a lie. I would much rather somebody punch me in the face than to tell me that I'm worthless. Because now when they tell me I'm worthless, I'm questioning who I really am. I'm questioning what's good about me. What could I do better? How could I be better? And I'm working that much harder. See, physically I'll heal if somebody hits me in the face. That'll heal up. But when somebody punches you in the heart, when somebody cuts you in the heart, those are wounds that are deep. Deep, deep wounds. There's a song out that says, there's a bullet with a name on it. We hurl spiritual bullets with people's names on it all the time. And if there was a judge standing before us, I can tell you that many of us in here today that are outside these walls can be charged with spiritual attempted homicide because we spend so much time trying to kill other people's spirits, forcing judgment upon them because we want to feel better about ourselves. In Proverbs 18:21 says, what you say can preserve or destroy life. So you must accept the consequences of your words. In other words, life and death resides in the power of the tongue. We have the ability to speak life, but we want to lavish people in excess with words of death and destruction. You're nothing. You won't be anything. You won't overcome this. You can't get out of this. How could you? This woman sitting in the seat of judgment is dealing with this. The crowd is circling her, shouting these obscenities at this poor young lady. And the thing that we've got to remember is that because she was close to these people, these are the same people that she ate lunch with, that she sat down with, that she invited into their home, that their kids probably played together. But the same people that were there when she was at the apex of her life, when she was at the top, are the same people that are standing before her now when life is getting ready to behead her. And we got to understand that a lot of times those same people, what will happen to us, the people that are there when we're at the top, will be the same people there waiting to pick up the pieces when we fall off our plateau. And that was a movie, a Disney movie, and it was actually a book before it was a movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The Hunchback in this movie went to a festival, and it was called the Festival of Fools. The purpose of this festival was for the ugliest person in the crowd to receive a crown. And got a prize for being ugly. So everybody else was wearing masks to try to make themselves appear worse physically. Well, of course, the Hunchback won because he was so hideous in appearance that, nobody could top how he looked. And when he won, it wasn't the type of prize that he thought he was going to receive. He got chained to a post. He got vegetables thrown at him, bricks and rocks and everything else. And this seems like this is not what I wanted. But the thing that we got to understand that in life, when all your mess is exposed, when people see the things that you've truly done, a lot of times they're going to back away because they don't know how to handle that. Even the people that are supposed to be closest to you, when they find out what you've truly done or who you really are, they're backing away. The Hunchback was in that same situation. The man that he looked to as a father let him suffer because he felt like he deserved what he was going through. A lot of times the friends that we have in our lives, because they want so much to get ahead in life, they're going to let us suffer because you know what? That's life. That's what happens. Instead of extending a hand and being helpful and trying to save it, they wash their hands of it. They say, hey, that's her. I don't have to go through it, so I don't have to worry about her going through it. And this is how life treats so many of us. We expose ourselves. We tell people who we are, trying to say, hey, I'm flawed too. But everybody else, what do? They just put their mask back on and they say, no, I'm great, I'm perfect. I don't have any flaws, I don't have any blemishes. You are the one that has the flaws. You are the one that is sitting in the seat of judgment. I'm not going to share in your suffering. And this is what people do. And the thing that we have to realize is that a lot of times in life, we need to understand that we don't know what made this young woman go to that bed and sleep with that young man. We don't know what happened in her life that made her feel like that was her only out. We don't know what happened to her that made her feel like she had no other choice but to do that. Nobody cared to realize that maybe as a young child, she suffered a rape, and the only way she knew how to show love to a man was to jump in his bed. But because people heard of judgment, they didn't know that. Nobody thinks anything of the child that cuts their wrists. All they look at, they see the scars. But they don't know that home life was so bad that the child felt like there was no way out. They just cast judgment. The drug dealer that stands out on the corner, night in and night out, selling dope to anybody and everybody that will buy it. Nobody understands that every night when he goes home, he stands at the foot of his kid's bed and he cries because he does not know how he's going to provide the next meal. Now, I'm not advocating any of this, but I do understand. So we can't ever say what we won't do if we've never been desperate enough to do. Jerry and Dan and myself had a conversation with the owner of this building when we first moved in. And Gary said something that will probably stick with me for a while. He told the owner of this building that people of privilege don't understand people of struggle. And it was in terms of money. But that phrase can be applied anywhere in life. If you're privileged enough to know where your next meal is coming from, you don't understand the struggle of somebody that has to sell drugs to provide their family. If you had a healthy relationship with your parents at home, you don't understand a kid that doesn't want to go home at night, that has been a frequent runaway. You don't understand because you've been privileged enough not to be in that struggle. So, as I said, don't ever say what you won't do until you've been desperate enough to do. You know, the thing is that people know what they're doing is wrong. People understand. People are not as dense as we think they are. This lady knew what she was doing was wrong. She didn't need any of us to tell her, you're wrong. You don't need to be doing this. That's not what she needed. She knew she was wrong. She needed somebody to give her a reason not to do what was wrong. She needed somebody to tell her what was right. And not right in a correcting form. She needed somebody to tell her, hey, I understand. I know what you're going through. I sympathize with you. Let's fix this. Let's talk this out. Let's take you from here and let's go clothe you. Let me feed you. Let me help you. Let me get you to the point where you can fend for yourself. But this is not what we do. We're content to tell people, hey, you're wrong. And leave it at that. And it's the same way with the accusers in this story. They say, we're going to cast condemnation on you. We're going to cast judgment on you. that the judgment that they had something in place that they thought was going to be the end of this woman, was going to be the very place of her salvation. Now, mind you, Jesus was here the entire time this was happening. And I'm pretty sure that this story unfolded a lot quicker than what we've gone through today. Jesus was in the crowd. Jesus knew what was going on. And the whole purpose of them bringing this woman to Jesus is because they wanted to entrap him. They wanted to find a reason to execute two people that day. They used this woman as bait against Jesus. Jesus is a lot smarter than people thought he was. Jesus knew exactly what was going on. They wanted to test him with the law. Jesus knew full well what the law was. Because when they were asking him, they said, "Teacher, what do we need to do with this woman?" And in those days, in order for a judgment to be executed, it had to be written. Now, Jesus was here in this crowd, and this took place on the 8th day of the feast, which would have been reserved as a day of rest. So the law says that not even 2 words can be written on the day of rest, but writing in the dirt was permissible. So the significance of writing in the dirt, we often overlook that. But see, had the people known the law themselves, they would have already known that they should have just backed away right then. But because they kept pressing, because they kept on, they didn't understand what Jesus was actually doing. And his writing in the dirt was a symbolic thing. Jeremiah 17:13 says this. It says, "Lord, you are Israel's hope. All who abandon you will be put to shame. They will disappear like names written in the dust, because they have abandoned you, Lord, the spring of fresh water." So the crowd, by casting judgment on this woman, they were turning their backs on God. They were turning their backs on the living water by throwing this judgment, throwing this condemnation on the woman. But what they did not know is that the condemnation they were throwing towards this woman was the signature to their own condemnation. Because they were doing an offense that was just as worthy of death as she did. And that's the thing you got to realize, is that sin is sin no matter what it is. This woman was wrong. She was absolutely in the wrong. But so were they. But the judgment that we throw on people says, well, your sin is a little bit bigger than mine, so I'm okay, you're not. How many times have we done that to people? Somebody gets caught robbing a bank. We say, you know what? I'm okay. They're not. But little does anybody know that the night before, you woke up in a bed that wasn't your spouse's. But you're okay, and they're not. See, this is the type of judgment. We measure out sin. I've got a cup of cheese right here, but I've got 2 gallons of selling drugs here. But you know what? It's all the same in God's eyes. Your judgment will be just as harsh as this lady's. But see, in our minds, we don't understand it. So they continue to press Jesus for an answer. They continue pushing and pushing and pushing, not knowing what they were doing, because they were looking for Jesus to be the source of this lady's condemnation. And we do that to this very day. But we just have a name for it. We call it speaking the truth in love. We take the Word of God and we dissect it, we slice it, dice it, we chop it up, and then we serve it to people and we say, this is what it's supposed to be. But the Bible tells us that we're not supposed to add anything, and we're not supposed to take anything away, because that is perfect just the way it is. It rightly divides and it will cut and separate the way that it needs to, but because it doesn't fit the way we want it to, because of course a change in our own lives, we decide what we want to tell people and what we don't want to tell people. Oh, I'm against gay marriage. Well, you know what? I'm against you cheating on your wife. Oh, cigarettes are bad for you. Well, you know what? That bottle of liquor that you turn up every night when you go home is not even that much better. You know, this is the thing that we do. We take the word of God. We call it using the sword of the Spirit. We want to take it and chop people down, cut them off the knees, cut them off the legs. But you know, the thing about the Bible is that the sword of the Spirit is not a weapon of destruction. It was never meant to be used to destroy. The only thing it was meant to destroy was the enemy. Anybody else that the sword of the Spirit touches is supposed to provide restoration. That's the book of restoration. Because it cuts away the wrong things in your life and it replaces them with the things of God. But we refuse to use it as that type of tool. We use it as a tool of destruction. So these people are hokey and proud of Jesus. They wanted to be this latest condemnation against the teacher. Give us an answer. What would you do? So Jesus, being who he is, he said, you know what? One of you here that is without sin, be my guest. Cast the first stone. And just like that, that woman's situation changed. Because the people in the crowd were now forced into a moment of introspection. Without ever moving his position, Jesus took every person in that crowd and he put them in that place where that woman sat. They were forced to think, you know what? What if he was exposing me? What if my faults were sitting in his seat of judgment? I know in my personal life I've done things that would put me here. I've done some things that people probably would change their opinion of me had they known. So I could tell you that at this point in time, if I was this woman, I would have deserved to be here. And that's what everybody in that crowd started to think. They were like, what if this was my daughter? What if this was my son? What if this was my child sitting in this seat of judgment? And what happened? Their hearts changed. And they slowly walked away. And Jesus was left alone with the woman. And he raises up, looks around, he said, daughter, where are your accusers?
Lord, I have none.
And neither do I. And go and sin no more. And with that, he released her. With that simple phrase, he released her from everything that she'd ever been, everything that she'd ever done. Now, Jesus acknowledged the sin because he told her to go and sin no more. So he knew what she had done was wrong. But guess what? He didn't hold it against her. He said, go and sin no more. He released her to live the life that she should have lived before. See, these people took her to a place where they thought it was going to beat her to death. And it became a springboard for new life. They took her to a place that they thought it was going to be the end, but Jesus looked at her and he said, no, this is just the beginning. They gave God the final say in the situation. And that's something that we can all take to heart today, is that no matter what goes on in our lives, what people hurl onto us, the labels that people throw onto us, God has the final say in every situation. You might have been labeled a whoremonger. You might have been labeled a drug dealer, a drug user, a drug addict. Whatever bad thing that you've been labeled in your life, that may have stuck with you. But God is letting us know today that we can go and sin no more. And that's what this whole series has been about. Beauty for ashes. The ashes that were this woman's life, she took them at that very moment and gave them to God, and He gave her beauty back. He allowed her to be who she was supposed to be, because He took upon Himself to take everything that was wrong, and then He gave her everything that was right. And that's all I have. Now, I'm going to ask that everybody stand to their feet. Every head bowed, every eye closed. You may have been one of these two people in the story today. We heard the accused, and we heard the accuser. Now, you may have been one of the accusers. You could have been that person that threw judgment out on somebody else. They judged somebody else for what they've done and had been the vile person that these accusers were. You may have been responsible for breaking somebody's spirit. But you know what? There's forgiveness. You could have been in the seat of judgment. Somebody could have sat you down and told you that you would never be anything in your life. Told you you would never be anywhere. Told you that you were worthless. Told you that you were not worthy. But you know what? God said you were the apple of His eye. He called you righteous. He called you His own. That's how we need to live on this day. As Pastor D prayed us out, just remember that Jesus took a seat that should have been judgment, and He turned it into mercy. Walk in that throughout your week, throughout the rest of your lives. You have been given mercy.
I just want us to meditate on this song for just a minute, which goes so perfectly with the word today.